cool scene.
Can I defend us for 1 second?
Please.
It's very clear that there's no sound in space, and that little clip, it doesn't really allow you to understand that. But we did adhere to the no sound in space thing. Don't worry. Just wanted to say that.
Well, and I wanted to get to that. I'm going to get to that a little later about like, do these movies drive you crazy? But we'll get to that in a minute. But this scene is a great scene. And the whole trip, when Brad's character flies to the moon, he flies commercial, it's just this fabulous, fabulous scene. And you are, there are lots of ideas floating around. One is the commercialization of space. One is the militarization of space. One is the kind of the Wild West notion that you get at the end. But Lindsey, I wanted to ask you, where is NASA right now in terms of lunar ambitions? And if you'd like to tell us about Project Artemis, I know we'd love to hear about it.
Excellent. So Artemis is our new program. It's going to bring the first woman and the next man back to the surface of the moon by 2024. And it's really part of a broader exploration plan that we have. We're not just going to the moon, we're going to the moon for a purpose. And that's to learn what it's like to live off the Earth and what technologies we need and figure out a few more questions we have about human physiology before we move on to Mars. Because we want to keep going. We don't just want to stay here. We want to open up the commercial space, let other people come, enjoy the moon, and we're going to go off and keep exploring.
So why, is this because you think we're going to need to colonize these areas at some point, or that people will actively want to?
There are a lot of reasons for us to go back to the moon. There are opportunities if you look at the soil and some of the mineralogy, and Sarah can definitely talk more about that than I can. But there are things that we can do there to open up commercial space, and it's just about spurring the economy. It's about getting people interested in math and science to make sure that we're the leaders in that area.
Interesting. And Sarah, can you talk a little bit about the science of it all?
Yeah, sure. We like to talk about now we're not just going back to the moon, but we're actually going forward to the moon. We've spent the last couple decades learning about the moon, and we now have a very different concept of it than we had during the Apollo era. We know a lot more. We know where to go to get the answers we need to move forward in lunar science. And one of the reasons that we're going to the South Pole is because there's a lot of exciting new science we can do there. We think there are a lot of resources there, particularly water, that we can use not only as a resource for our astronauts to use, but to learn about the moon too, and to understand how the moon has evolved over the last few billion years.
So,
can I ask you a couple
of
questions?
Please, yes.
Well, I just heard a couple of things that I thought were really interesting. One that we would have to take, if we were going to make a trip to Mars, we would have to take off from the moon because of the lack of gravity.
So it's helpful. The gravity well from Earth is a lot. So if you leave from the moon or from near Earth space, you have a lot less gravity to overcome. So it does save us a lot on fuel, which is the big cost of lifting things off.
And one more.
Please, this is why we convened you all.
And that they believe there is water on the moon at the South Pole?
Yes, at both poles.
And that they would use, one of the things they would use this is to make hydrogen?
Yeah, water, H2O, right, is made up of hydrogen and oxygen, and we can split it apart and use both hydrogen and oxygen as fuel sources, but oxygen also to breathe and all sorts of good uses for it.
Okay, I'm done.
Well, no, please, Eddie, and I wanted to stipulate that. Please jump in and
right.
ask.
Yeah.
You got that right?
You did.
We did. Actually, we got it wrong, but we got it right. Well, the 1/6 gravity thing, we got right, that they'd have deep space rockets launching from the moon. But I hear now the plan has changed, that Gateway is itself going to be the craft that's going to go to Mars.
It's one of our options. So Gateway is kind of like a very small space station that'll be orbiting around the moon. And so we're going to use that as a point because it's very easy to get to that orbit, but it also allows you to go anywhere you want on the lunar surface from there. And once we have that, it's going to be a great analog for a Mars transfer vehicle if you wanted to use that going forward.
Right. Yeah.
But again, so these expeditions, I think one of the ideas that Ad Astra engages so beautifully is that there is this impulse to explore and to always go further, but basically what if we export the same problems we haven't solved here, I mean, is that, I know this is a philosophical question, but is that a conversation you ever have? Like, maybe we shouldn't be doing this until we actually solve some of our human tribal issues here on Earth.